that joint exercise took place in Minnesota at Camp Ripley. And that ran just for a couple of days until August 27th. And that was known as Operation Valhalla.
Lastly, to my friend Charlie Kirk, rest now, brother. We have the watch, and I'll see you in Valhalla.
Well, Candace is really starting to uncover some things that are implicating a lot of people and a lot of bad stuff. And one of those people, in my opinion, is FBI Director Kash Patel. What is the statistical likelihood that a joint military operation between France and the United States just a couple of weeks before Charlie's assassination would be held and called Operation Valhalla? 1 in a million? 1 in 10 million? 1 in a billion? Cash? So many unanswered questions, including who really is Brigitte Macron, and what old, powerful family is she connected to? Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear in this one are some things that should make you go, Harley Schlanger is here to help me break it all down. And before we start, just a quick word about one of my favorite sponsors, Noble Gold. As we wrap up 2025, it's a good time to slow down and reflect on the year. If there's one thing we've all learned, it's that uncertainty isn't temporary. It's the world in which we live now. As many have said, hope is not a strategy. For over a decade, my friends at Noble Gold Investments have helped Americans protect themselves and the people they love by diversifying their wealth with gold and silver. Look, no one knows what 2026 will bring, but one thing's for sure. In an uncertain world, real wealth isn't digital. It's physical, lasting, and it's in your hand. So when you're sitting around the table this holiday season surrounded by family, remember the best gift you can give isn't under the tree, it's peace of mind. And that's what Noble Gold delivers, peace of mind, 1 ounce at a time. And this holiday season, when you open a qualified account with Noble Gold Investments, you'll receive 10 1-ounce commemorative silver holiday coins, each beautifully designed with a snowman and a warm season's greetings engraving. These limited edition silver coins make thoughtful gifts, and they're worth double what they were just a year ago. Before the year ends, take one smart step toward a safer future. Visit Noble Gold Investments and get your free wealth protection kit today. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Don't leave your future to chance. The link is below. Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for being here. Harley Schlanger is on the line, and I'm so eager to tear Kash Patel a new one in this one, and the Macrons. And going all the way back to the House of Rothschild, I think that's where this story goes, folks. Before I bring Harley on, I just want to point out that Candace's latest broadcast Monday night is titled Charlie Kirk and Brigitte's Legionnaires. That's episode 271. Now, we're going to play some clips from that absolutely jaw-dropping show in just 1 second, but here's an update from Candace. 5 hours ago, as I read this, she writes, I received information last night that put the final pieces together for me. I now can say with full confidence that I believe Charlie Kirk was betrayed by the leadership of Turning Point USA and some of the very people who eulogized him on stage. Yes, I will be naming names and providing evidence for my claims, and I'm making a personal plea to every well-meaning person who donated to this godforsaken organization to request a refund. You were lied to, and leadership knew. Now, friends, we have a lot to cover today, and we're going to start with exposing Kash Patel for the snake I believe he is. Harley is back. Harley, how are you, sir? Welcome back.
I'm fine, Sean. Good to be with you.
Thank you for joining me. And Harley, guys, is the president of the LaRouche organization, an historian, and obviously a friend to truth when he found himself on the Ukrainian hit list. Harley, I emailed you last night in a fury, and I said, are you watching this? As I was watching Candace with my wife, I've got detailed notes here, copious notes about that show, and I know you were able to watch it, weren't you?
Oh, yeah, it was very compelling because what it shows is how an actual investigative journalist does work. Unlike the frauds that we have running around who claim to be truth tellers, she's got a team that's doing some very good investigation and getting right down to the heart of things that you're not supposed to know.
That's the way I see it. And she's naming names and she has receipts, and her grassroots investigation is uncovering remarkable things about France, about the Macrons, about the French legionnaires, about military subcontractors aboard military aircraft that flew out of Cairo. The story just becomes more jaw-dropping. And this time we don't have to wait, like 1963, Harley, we don't have to wait 7 years for the Zapruder film. So where I want to start today is by unmasking, uncloaking, exposing Kash Patel, who was once a guest on this show, somebody I held in high esteem. To say this man has been a disappointment is an absolute understatement. So to set the stage, we're going to move outside the Candace sphere and play this clip from Thomas Massey about Kash Patel's FBI. Listen to this.
Kash Patel's staff threatened my staff with a criminal investigation if we didn't straighten up and play ball.
I was going to ask you about that, but since you brought it up, and I didn't
I'm bringing it up.
Okay, you brought it up.
And so, like a criminal investigation having nothing to do, he said it was going to be a fraud. We're going to investigate one of your staff for fraud. Right. And he told another one of my staff this. If you guys don't straighten up, if you want to play hardball, if this is how you want to play it or something like that, this member of your staff is going to get criminally investigated for fraud.
All right, I'll pause it there. You guys get the idea. Thomas Massey goes on to explain, he reached out to Dan Bongino and said, hey, somebody in your FBI just threatened my staff. If we don't play ball regarding the whistleblower, if we don't fall into line, you're going to start a criminal investigation. Well, Bongino knew that was a bad look for the FBI, so Bongino told the agent, call Massey's office and apologize. But this is Kash Patel's FBI, folks. Now, I want to play this clip from Candace, and this is really jaw-dropping stuff about French legionnaires who were integrated with U.S. Marines for a training, and wait till you realize what the training was called.
After I began researching the French Legion, I very quickly stumbled upon the fact that they were also involved in a joint operation with American troops in the exact weeks leading up to Charlie's assassination. More specifically, according to the, French Foreign Legion website, between August 2nd and August 25th of this year, the legionnaires from the 4th Company, 2nd Foreign Infantry Regiment, the 6th Light Armored Brigade, were integrated with U.S. Marines of the 6th Marine Regiment for a 3-week training deployment, okay? That took place in California. Okay. And then once that training ended, I said this online, another camp began immediately. It was a joint exercise with civilians, which included military men from the Minot Air Force Base. And that joint exercise took place in Minnesota at Camp Ripley. And that ran just for a couple of days until August 27th. And that was known as Operation Valhalla.
Okay, we'll pause it there. By the way, interesting that personnel from the Minot Air Force Base were part of that exercise in Minnesota. The same Minot Air Force Base where the planes, the Egyptian military planes from Cairo, they flew into Provo via Minot Air Force Base. I'm going off memory, but I think I have that right. Okay. Harley, do you recall when Kash Patel was so eagerly doing these press conferences about capturing the perp, Tyler Robinson, within 33 hours? We kept hearing 33 hours. We did it all within 33 hours. Do you remember that?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I think that is coded language. Personally, I think that is a nod to the people that own the world and control the FBI. Here's how one of these press conferences with Kash Patel began.
Thank you, Governor. This is what happens when you let good cops be cops. The FBI and our partners are proud to stand here today together to bring justice to the family of Charlie Kirk and honor his memory. I want to express my deep gratitude to President Trump.
All right, we'll pause it there. Now, do you remember what Candace just said about that operation in Minnesota, guys? What was that called? The Joint Military Operation involving U.S. Marines and French Foreign Legionnaires. Remember what that was called? Here's how Kash Patel ended this press conference.
As long as we need to find and apprehend whatever suspects were involved in this crime. Lastly, to my friend Charlie Kirk, rest now, brother. We have the watch, and I'll see you in Valhalla.
All right, I'll pause it there. Harley, I don't know what the coincidence ratio is on that, but I would say it's something like 1 in a billion that the operation that involved the people that may have been involved in taking Charlie's life, that operation was called Operation Valhalla.
And that was known as Operation Valhalla.
And when the press conference occurred where Cash said we got the perp, Tyler Robinson, he signs off by saying Valhalla.
To my friend Charlie Kirk, rest now, brother. We have the watch, and I'll see you in Valhalla.
Make it make sense, Harley.
Well, I think these guys are caught up in their sense of their own invincibility, that they can run a cover-up, no one will know, that they can get away with things. This has been the case for a long time, but especially since the Kennedy assassination. And here we have the FBI director who was brought in supposedly because he's going to show us who in the deep state is controlling the political situation. And then we see him here in a blatant cover-up. I mean, what the whole question of Tyler Robinson, there's so many questions. And the attempt to wrap this up within 2 days and say we've got it all settled and done, we know what happened, and that's all there is to it. The anomalies stick out for people who are looking for them. And fortunately, someone like Candace Owens has made it her business to find those anomalies and unwind them, peel the onion, so to speak, so we can figure out what's going on.
Well, I just think that it is coded language to the handlers, to the owners, that Cash Patel is more than willing to play ball, just like one of his agents demanded that Thomas Massey and Massey's staff play ball regarding the whistleblower and whatever the cover-up is that the FBI wanted in that case. Now, here is something very important that Candace had to say about the phone call. She literally got a phone call from Donald Trump via the Macrons, who asked Trump to ask her to stop talking about Brigitte, stop talking about Brigitte's past. Trump made that phone call, and in hindsight, here's what Candace wishes she had been asked.
My lawyers, and we have Brigitte lawyers, I am not loving this, okay? I'm just not loving the fact that I get a call from the federal government asking me to stop speaking about Brigitte. And I think that it's kind of a funny story that'll one day be in my autobiography. Truly, that was my thought. Like, it's funny that we're on the phone talking about, like, the French, why is he married to somebody born a male? And I clearly was not thinking that there was maybe sort of an implicit threat involved here, like literally just stop speaking about her. And I really do wish, going back, that they had tried honesty, right? They had said, hey, Brigitte might be an asset to the Mossad, which is what we had received a tip regarding, that we were working on, confirming during Becoming Brigitte season 2. I wish they had been more explicit and said, we really actually need you to shut up about this forever. And I probably would have done it if they were just honest and said it's a national security issue.
I'll pause it there. I think it's fascinating. It's just absolutely fascinating. And my jaw dropped last night, Harley, when she connected that dot and said, we were investigating the possibility that Brigitte is a Mossad asset. Now, I'd never heard that before, but now some of the things she's uncovering regarding Jean-Michel Tregnow, who Candace believes is Brigitte Macron, is stunning stuff, and it all links back to an old, powerful family. I'm thinking Rothschild. I'm filling in some of the blanks that Candace is uncovering here. But how interesting, Harley, that Brigitte may have been, may have always been, or is a Mossad asset. I didn't see that one coming.
Well, if you look at Macron himself, he got his career through a company called Lazard Frere, which is a Rothschild banking agency. Lazard is an old firm that has escaped notoriety, whereas the Rothschilds, everyone has heard of them, knows something about them. But Lazard Frere was one of those operations that was in charge of the Clinton administration. Felix Rohatyn, who was known for the Big Mac project, the takeover of New York City, the looting of New York City in the 70s. So this is an old, you're absolutely right, it's an old oligarchical institution. And the fact that there's a connection, direct connection with Macron to this should not make it surprising to find that there may be a connection with Brigitte.
Okay, and let me just fill in a few more details for the audience, because The reason Candace got to this point with the Charlie Kirk investigation is in large part because of her Becoming Brigitte investigation. And it's very important to note that the allegation is that the Macrones have taken out a hit, a $1.5 million hit on Candace's life. And nobody from the U.S. government who has been informed about this has said jack squat. There's not been an official statement from the White House. They've been informed from any of the intelligence agencies or the FBI, and that is absolutely unacceptable. Now, what Candace has uncovered, and the blanks I want to fill in for the audience, are this. As a boy, as a 14-year-old student, Emmanuel Macron was the victim of a pedophilic teacher said to be Brigitte Macron. But if Brigitte is actually a male, Jean-Michel Tragnon, then Emmanuel Macron was the victim of a male pedophile who then he married, and the male pedophile is masquerading as a woman, and the male pedophile is, I believe, a Rothschild. And then you got the Rothschild connection with the bank you just described there with Emmanuel Macron. So it seems to me that the Rothschild fingerprints are all over this entire story. And in this clip, Candace asks, what from the gates of hell is Brigitte Macron?
Literally, what from the gates of hell is Brigitte Macron? Okay. In case you're not there yet, let me tell you that just to make myself feel good, I said, let me just confirm where Brigitte Macron was on 9/10. That feels like a very easy thing to do. Like, yeah, this is the first lady, man of France. It's a pretty busy season everywhere. We're talking early September. It's back to school. There's a lot going on. And I was very comforted to see that Brigitte Macron had opened Paris Design Week. Makes sense, right? Opened Paris Design Week on, I believe, September 4th. Very public, gets kind of photographed with the culture, the Ministry of Culture lady, right? The head of their Ministry of Culture and actual lady. And then Brigitte Macron gets photographed on 9/4 with Zelensky. Zelensky's coming in for a big interstate meeting. And Brigitte Macron sees to it that he's also photographed with Saudi Arabia at some orchestra that Saudi Arabia is putting on. And what's interesting is that it's daytime when that photograph happens. And after that, Brigitte just falls off a cliff for 6 days. Brigitte's just gone for 6 days. And I would really like to know where Brigitte Macron was at for those 6 days, okay?
All right, so where was Brigitte Macron on September 10th, the day Charlie was assassinated? She's going to turn her sleuths on the internet around the world loose on that question. And just to fill in some blanks, guys, Wilmington, Delaware, a hub for MK Ultra and trans surgeries, is filled with buildings owned by France, believe it or not, including the Bracebridge Complex, a 1 million square foot complex bought by Bank of America in 2006, abandoned and left empty in 2018 when Macron was elected. In 2024, legislation was passed providing financial support to the Longwood Foundation, founded by Pierre S. DuPont, to make it function as an educational center. Well, that location, 1100 North King Street, has ties to 920 North King Street, 1100 North Market Street, and 500 North Delaware Street, owned by France. And in that building at 500 North Delaware, guys, the building owned by France, on the third floor is the FBI. So what the heck is going on here? And by the way, the reason I bring up Delaware is because one of Candace's whistleblowers said a French dignitary, flew into Delaware prior to Charlie's assassination. And now Candace is wondering, was it Brigitte? We're going down some rabbit holes here, but I never thought that Charlie Kirk's assassination would involve the French government, Harley. I always figured all roads would lead straight to Israel.
Well, let's take a little bit deeper look at what Wilmington represents. Delaware is one of the starting points of the Federal Reserve banking system. Credit card operations, transactions go through there every day. It's part of the international bankster cartel. And don't forget, it's also where Joe Biden was from. Now, in Wilmington, the state is pretty much a subsidiary of DuPont, the large chemical corporation, one of the companies at the heart of the big pharma. And so you're if you can track some of this to Wilmington, Delaware, you're really going right to the heart of a global oligarchy. Now, what else was going on in that period? And this is something that I think Candace ought to map into her investigation. This is when the situation in Gaza was moving toward a so-called ceasefire, which is not a ceasefire. This is also when the French and the British and the Germans were trying to figure out how to double-cross Trump and go ahead with the continuing funding of the Ukraine war, keeping Zelensky going. So it would be highly inconvenient for someone like Charlie Kirk to be running around, especially going through the change that he was going through that Candace has reported. So you put all of that together, and what are you capturing? You're capturing a shift, an attempt to shift the strategic situation away from an operation against the Mossad, against the MI6, and against the corrupt elements of the U.S. Security state. All of this comes together. And I think what she's opening up is an element of how this thing was pulled off, because the assassination of Charlie Kirk, as you know and your viewers know, was not simply about Charlie turning against the war, but about a shift that was going on among young people in the United States who were beginning to question whether someone like Kash Patel or even Donald Trump could be trusted.
Lucid insight, as always, Harley. And I don't know that we can trust Mr. Trump at this point, because why hasn't the U.S. government made any statement at all regarding the alleged assassination plot of Candace Owens? Okay, they could either deny it or they could confirm it, but they've remained silent. And for all of the other trolls, or should I say the people that have bent the knee over on X regarding Candace's investigation. And when I say bend the knee, I mean these are the people that go after her constantly, trying to tell us that she's a psycho who has lost her mind because of her investigation. Since there's been nothing but crickets from FBI Director Kash Patel, I think everybody has a choice to make. Either Candace is a nut who is hell-bent on destroying her reputation, her show, and her legacy, or she is telling the absolute God's honest truth, and our government is hopelessly captured and corrupt. Either way, I am demanding that Alex Jones, InfoWars, Gateway Pundit, and Zero Hedge report on this, because they have all remained eerily silent about Candace's investigation. And I have had quite enough of it. There's only 2 clips left to play. Let me play this one. Candace senses a real urgency right now because the forces aligned against us are so blatantly evil.
I'll read a couple of these. Mickey Shaw writes, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood. We fear no man. Candace is our champion. Jesus is our king." Bless you. And that is true. We just have to commit ourselves to truth. And like I said, I sense an urgency right now. They are being so evil in our faces. They chose to publicly execute Charlie and then to dare us to question the narrative. That's scary. It's meant to scare you and to instill fear in you. And the response to this, of course, has to be more truth. We cannot be fearful. We have to keep telling the truth.
All right, Harley, before I play the way she tagged out the show, and it's absolutely powerful, it's a couple of minutes, your thoughts on what you've heard so far. By the way, when she started this investigation and she suspected that Charlie was betrayed at the highest levels, she posited the idea that I wonder what name will be revealed as the ultimate betrayer. Because when she reveals that name will go down in history like the name Judas. It's powerful stuff, Harley.
Well, I'll tell you what makes it so compelling. This administration came into office promising transparency, promising to release all the documents from the many cases that have been covered up over the years, including the Kennedy assassination. And step by step, we've been let down by Patel. Every time that there's something that's come up, whether it was the Kennedy files, the Epstein files, the attempt against Donald Trump, we're not getting the story. There's so many anomalies. Now, law enforcement technically should begin its investigation looking at the anomalies, because the so-called facts don't tell you what happened. The question of who was shooting from a rooftop. Was it really a shot from a rooftop? Was there something else going on? You can't tell that from the so-called empirical facts. You've got to look deeper to see who could possibly do these things and why. And that's what she's doing. That's what law enforcement should do. That's what Patel promised he would do. That's what President Trump promised he would do. And now we're seeing an administration that's going off course. Supposedly going to deal with the drug problem by blowing up these fishing boats in the Caribbean, when in fact everyone knows you want to stop drugs, go after the drug money launderers. And who are the drug money launderers? The too big to fail banks. To me, the real problem is the unwillingness to investigate those networks that are supposedly above suspicion. The ones who get bailed out when they blow things up, the ones that get covered up for, that's where we have to look. And that's what Candace is getting close to doing.
Boy, you're giving me goosebumps. Let me just point out, too, that what I mentioned previously here, 1100 North King Street, the Bracebridge complex, a 1 million square foot complex bought by Bank of America in 2006, only to be abandoned and left empty in 2018. This is the same Bank of America, Harley, that I exposed as harassing me endlessly in my website when I was just coming up the ranks there in 2011, I think, 2012. And all of the harassment we proved was coming from 3 IP addresses owned by Bank of America. 2 of those IP addresses were on the East Coast. And I wonder if they weren't coming from that 1 million square foot Bracebridge complex owned by Bank of America. This is all incestuous with these big banks, Harley.
Of course it is. And I bring up again Jamie Dimon, whose company was repeatedly fined for drug money laundering. And one of his top aides said, well, the fines aren't so much, it's just the cost of doing business. So we're dealing with an establishment which at its top is completely corrupt. And I'll just mention this. I know that we don't want to get off on this, but if you look at what's being covered up in the Epstein case, every step of the way of the shift toward a so-called Great Reset, Epstein was a part of it. And so what are we told about him? Well, he's a sex criminal. Well, that he is. But people with that mentality and that morality are also the biggest robbers and killers. And so when you start poking around, you start to see something very, very ugly. And when you see things that are ugly in this world, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Mossad, MI6, and corrupted elements of the U.S. intelligence community.
Well, you want to hear something really crazy? Listen to this. Before I play the last couple of minutes from Candace and how she tagged out her Monday show, let me just share this with the audience, because I've been paying very close attention, watching every single one of Candace's shows for the past month or more. I call it appointment viewing. And let me just fill in the blanks here, because I think where she's going regarding Jean-Michel Tregnow, a.k.a. Brigitte Macron, believe it or not, Harley, there are missing years that can't be accounted for in this person's life. And many of those years, the time was spent in the United States. And believe it or not, Harley, you know where I think Candace is going based on some of the things she said, some of the things she has teased regarding this monster, a.k.a. Brigitte Macron? I believe that Candace may reveal that she thinks this person was a serial killer running free in our country for some period of time. As crazy as that sounds, don't be surprised, folks, if that's where she goes. Candace said in a recent broadcast, she believes that all of our nations are ruled by psychopaths, literal psychopaths. So again, don't be surprised if she ties this thing together and we reveal some horrifying truths about this person called Brigitte Macron.
Sean, if I can just on that point present a couple of things that come out of France also that prove this, that France is run by psychopaths right now. The head of NATO's military council, Admiral Dragon, has said that in order to stop Putin, there must be a consistent, strong military policy, which could include preemptive strikes against Russia. Now, the head of the chief military advisor to Macron and the head of the French military said that France is going to be in war with Russia in a couple of years, but they're not ready to fight because they don't have the right military mentality. The problem is the French are afraid to sacrifice their children. Now, can you imagine a leader of the military of a major power making a statement like that, which has all the implications that bring up Satanism and wholesale murder, that the French people are afraid to sacrifice their children?
Well, actually, that adds up, and I'll tell you why. There is a group of people on this planet that still thinks that way, as in the days of Noah. And I played the clip in my conversation with Pete from the days of Noah just the other day, and it's the clip of the female rabbi in the synagogue saying, sacrifice hasn't gone away. Human sacrifice hasn't gone away. We just call it a different name now. It's through our wars that we sacrifice these young men to the gods with whom we curry favor.
We do it because we believe that the gods whose favor we so desperately seek,
just one
freedom,
guy.
security, prosperity, flourishing, that they demand blood as the price of their favor.
What?
We do it because we cannot see any other choice.
That's literally what she said, Harley. And this is a Jewish woman, a rabbi, saying that human sacrifice hasn't gone away. We believe it is required for the world to continue. Her words, not mine, Harley. That is the thinking of some of these people.
It is, and it goes back to the whole question of hating human life, hating human beings, hating the fact that people are free. And that's why there's a Malthusian commitment to population reduction, because there may be too many people that get out of control.
Let me play the last couple of minutes from Candace because I think it's so critically important. And I will just say this. Imagine the courage this woman has if the Macrons have taken out a hit on her and she says she has the receipts, okay? She's got the evidence. She's passed that on to the U.S. government. Now imagine the courage she has to take last week off because I'm sure the government advised her to do so. Maybe they shored up her security. Maybe she had to shore up her security herself. I don't know, but the courage it takes to get back on the microphone on Monday night, last night, and speak this kind of truth. If what she's saying is true, some of the most powerful people on planet Earth want to assassinate her. And yet she still has the courage to say this.
Where God is, there is liberty. Absolutely. And that is why, I'm putting the information out there. I think people need to know that this is how things are planned. There's nothing that makes sense about what happened on that day. And when you speak to the UVU students, the fact that they didn't recognize anybody indicates that we might be looking at military regiments that were there. And from the information that I am getting, which I'm going to explain later this week, I think there were some National Guard regiments that were there, some French Foreign Legionnaires that were there, and yes, some Israelis that were there, hence the 12 Israeli cell phones, and that information is all going to come to light. Like I said to you from the beginning, I never had for a single second the sense that they were going to get away with it this time. I felt the devil had overplayed his hand. And that is the circumstance. We are seeing that. I think Brigitte overplayed his hand. I think Jean-Michel Trogneau, the evidence is pointing to the fact that he is from a very powerful old family. That's pretty obvious to me. The entire Trogneau backstory makes entirely no sense, saying that they were chocolatiers and things were never interrupted. They just ran this chocolatier factory from like the 1880s all the way through to now. Not possible. Nazis did an aerial bombardment. They occupied the city of Amiens. This seems to me to be an identity that was just created and materialized for this family, and that the true family is a very powerful family, and that is why they are so obsessed with protecting this absurd state secret. The whole world knows this is a dude. What are we doing here? And they are willing to go mask down and to expose themselves to keep up this pretense, to keep pretending that it's a woman. Why did Jean-Michel have to transition, quote unquote, transition into a woman? What was Jean-Michel Trogneau involved in that required that transition? These are now the questions that I'm asking myself. And you know what? If the federal government is going to bankrupt us for telling the truth, then I'm going to have to be the example for the world to wake up to that, okay? Then even this lawsuit in a weird way is blessed because it is exposing every layer of corruption that exists, that even when you do things the right way your entire life, when you don't commit any crimes, when you do the right thing and you find someone that loves you, get married, you have children, that you will be attacked for surviving the matrix and committing yourself to truth. That feels like a very important lesson for the entire world to wake up to. And I think the entire world is waking up to that right now. So you know what? Joke's on you. You will be hoisted by your own petard. And we will end with that French expression. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Harley, I just have to say I'm very proud of her. I personally, the way I am sort of consuming this information and processing this, I'm equating her to, I'll put her right up there with one of Jesus's disciples as far as her courage goes, I got to say.
Well, she knows what she's taking on. And I think you can see that she not only believes what she's saying, but she's going to prove it. And she is willing to stand there and present the evidence and have someone disprove it if she's wrong. And it's that kind of courage that's necessary when you take on this kind of evil.
Who do you think, if you had to guess, is the very powerful old family Candace refers to when she says Jean-Michel Tragneau, a.k.a. Brigitte Macron, is connected to or part of a very powerful old family? Could it be the DuPonts, or do you think I have it right, the Rothschilds? Any guesses on that?
Or maybe the Sinclairs, if people remember the story of the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, the delusional oligarchs who think they're directly descended from, and that's what the British Israelites are, the rulers of the United Kingdom, the monarchs. So the oligarchy, there are handfuls of families like that that are still there, that trace their roots back to the Roman Empire. And I would suspect that that's what she's looking at.
Let me ask you one other thing regarding this case, and then if there's anything else you want to cover, by all means, let's do that. But, for the Stephen Crowders and the Insurrection Barbies and the cat turds of the world that have gone out of their way to disparage this woman, to the Kash Patels, to the Donald Trumps, to the Pam Bondis of this world, and yes, Tulsi, where are you on this? I would advise all the listeners that what you just heard from Candace is far in a way more detailed and makes a lot more sense and connects a lot more dots in the open air assassination of Charlie Kirk than Tyler Robinson, the lone gunman, for which the government has provided zero evidence to back up that lone gunman nonsense. So I think people have a choice, Harley. People have a choice. Either prove that Candace is a nutcase and a liar hell-bent on destroying her own career, or what she's saying is true, and our country and our world is hopelessly corrupt. And if that's the case, what could possibly bring it down except for this kind of information, Harley? This is the type of information that brings down governments.
Well, and it's happening at a moment where we're seeing warning signs of a global financial crash. Now, the reason I bring this up is that what this whole story represents is a part of what Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum were talking about when they talked about a great reset. They're planning on changing every aspect of human society, power to the handful of billionaires, and to kill off more of the ordinary people, or if not killing them off directly, creating the conditions where they can't survive. So that's what the Great Reset is all about, taking away the freedom that people have become accustomed to. And that freedom includes being able to think for yourself and to speak about what you believe. And if we give that up, we have nothing.
100 million, 1,000, quadrillion%. I couldn't agree with you more. By the way, guys, silver hitting a new all-time high again today at $58.61. The genie is out of the bottle on a lot of lies we've been told, guys. A lot of lies are unraveling. The banksters have been manipulating silver with paper for decade after decade after decade to try to kill the early warning alarm system of inflation, to try to cover up what they've been doing to our dollar and our purchasing power. Harley's not wrong. The Great Reset is what they want. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Well, ain't none of us going to be happy if we don't get justice. And by the way, Harley, the justice we require in the case of Charlie Kirk's assassination is actual arrests of the perpetrators, not another lone gunman fable like 1963.
Consequences. There have to be consequences for those people who trample on international law and human rights and human dignity. And so far, there has not been accountability. There are not consequences, but there must be.
Let me just ask you, as you look around the globe, is everything as hopelessly broken as I'm starting to view our government, in the French government, in the Israeli government? Or is it just isolated? I mean, is the German government also this bad? What other governments are this bad?
In Germany. And that's why you have the so-called E3 countries, Starmer, Macron, and Merz are leading the effort to keep the war in Ukraine going and move it to a higher level, more killing, more destruction. No, the whole world is not like this. You have nations that have never had an opportunity that are suddenly asserting their sovereignty. And this is really why the desperation is so great in London and Wall Street and in Paris. The French, look, we were talking about the French Foreign Legion. They got kicked out of Mali and Niger and Burkina Faso, three poor countries that were part of the French West African controlled colony. Who is policing that area? The Foreign Legion. So they've taken their beatings from leaders of the global South who are suddenly saying, we are sovereign, we're going to defend our people, and you can't do anything about it. And you know what they do? They support terrorism to destroy those countries.
Well, you and I have talked about the International Assassination Bureau. That's what you coined it in so many of our past conversations. I think that's what we're talking about specifically with Candace. What she's uncovering is exactly that. It's not just NATO, but it's all sort of interconnected. I think what is absolutely jaw-dropping here, though, is the president of France and his wife allegedly ordered the hit against Candace Owens. That's the jaw dropper here. It's not NATO. It's not the CIA. It's not some cloaked group, right? It's the frickin' French president. It's blowing my mind, Harley.
Well, we've seen it before. Look what we saw with Biden. Look what we saw with Obama. You know, they get these displaceable parts who are owned completely by this international banker oligarchy, and who the reason they're owned is because they're totally immoral and corrupt. They have no moral compass.
That's an understatement too, because I want to just round out the conversation and remind people about who the DuPonts are. Okay, the DuPonts, Wilmington, Delaware. That building I described at 1100 North King Street, the 1 million square foot complex previously owned by Bank of America. In 2024, the legislation was passed providing financial support to the Longwood Foundation founded by Pierre DuPont to make it function as an educational center. Think MK Ultra, think deep state, think intelligence agencies, think DuPonts. Okay, the DuPonts. This from Forbes, how a DuPont heir avoided jail time for a heinous crime. This man raped his son and his daughter. Children, toddlers, in fact. Robert Richards admitted to raping his 3-year-old daughter. He also raped his son. He was given probation because the judge thought he wouldn't do very well in prison. You know why he wouldn't do very well in prison? Because in prison there's a code, and if you rape kids, you're gonna die. They don't like child rapists in prison. But I guess if you're a DuPont, you can rape your own kids and get probation. I think that speaks to who these people are quite aptly, Harley.
I would agree.
I can't thank you enough for coming on today to break this stuff down, because I think not only is it the most important story in the world right now that's being ignored by Gateway Pundit and Zero Hedge and even InfoWars, it is the story that could bring down these satanic governments. And I hope it happens, Harley. I pray to God. I pray for God and his legions of angels to protect Candace Owens, because I think she's doing God's work at this point. I really do. I'll give you the final word, and please, please, please tell people how we can find your great work every day.
Well, more of us have to become the right arm of God. That's in fact why we have freedom of conscience, freedom of creativity, and the ability to will to act for the good And we ought to take advantage of that. If we don't, we lose everything. People can find my daily 10 to 12 minute video update at thelaroucheorganization.com. And if you want to get any questions to me or discussion, you can always write to me at my personal email address, harleysch@gmail, harleysch@gmail.com. And I just like to remind people that I just finished a 2-part story on who is the real Jeffrey Epstein and what was behind his case. So there's a lot of flanks that are opening, and Candace is certainly taking on a big one.
She is. She's leading the charge. And folks, how interesting is it to watch a powerful, intelligent, Black woman lead the charge for humanity? Guys, get out of your rocking chairs and start to take action. Candace is out there alone. She's going under the wire, and boy, does she have courage. If you're not watching, start watching. Candace Owens. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Harley, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, friends, until next time, God bless you. And I'll remind you every single day for free, check us out to get the real news, the antidote to corporate propaganda 24/7 at sgtreport.com. God bless.
Well, first let me say, I did not at all hear back from the FBI on the American side. I did hear back from the counterterrorism unit. I did hear back from the White House confirming that that message had been delivered on Trump's desk. Me saying that I had the information. I guess he didn't want to inquire further, which is interesting. But the FBI left me on red. And I will say I didn't go through an official channel and send an email, and I should do that. But I did send a text message to somebody very high up who received the text message. No response. Now, I thought that the claim of the French Foreign Legion being involved in Charlie's assassination, I thought the FBI might be interested. No phone calls even from Utah's FBI branch have come into me either. Wouldn't you want to see? Aren't we supposed to be investigating the Charlie Kirk assassination? It was totally not a state operation, and they really want to get to the truth, which explains why nobody called. No, Utah, not interested. I'm actually surprised Tyler Robinson's lawyer hasn't reached out to me. What's going on here?